Time now to talk business. I'm joined by Mervin Jebaraj, economist and interim director with the Walton College of Business Center for Business and Economic Research. Mervin, let's talk Razorback football. It was a poor season for the Razorbacks, kind of capped by an end-of-the-season firing of Coach Brett Bielema and athletic director Jeff Long. We all saw the crowd sizes in the stands. What's the impact of low attendance on the Northwest Arkansas economy? Any idea?
Well, I think, we've talked about this a little bit before when we talked about Frank Broyles' legacy, but a very important part of the regional economy here in Northwest Arkansas, and especially in Fayetteville, revolves around the fall football games and a couple of other events like Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. So, in the summer months when the students are gone, the entertainment district on Dixon Street has, slower sales because there isn't nearly as many people, and a few, 6-7 weekends in the fall more than make up for the business that they lost in the summer. So, those businesses really do depend on football fans coming out there and spending their money. And so a poor season has an effect in several different ways. One is that they move the games out of prime time, so it's not an evening game or a late afternoon game, which means that fans are less likely to go out to Dixon Street at 11 in the morning when the game starts at 11 in the morning. Not that some don't, but they're less likely to do so. They're also less likely to stay in the region when the games start that early because they could just as easily drive back to whichever part of the state or another region that they come from, because most of the attendees at Northwest Arkansas football games here in Fayetteville come from outside Northwest Arkansas. That number varies between 68 and 72% of the attendees come from outside this region. So if it's an early game, they don't stay. They're not spending as much money in the hotels. They're not spending as much money in the restaurants and bars. So when we did this study, we've done it twice so far. When we measured it once in Bobby Petrino's last season, and we measured it another time during Brett Bielema's third season. And we actually found some measurable differences in people's spending based on how well the team was doing. So Bobby Petrino's last season, we were ranked 5th. I think we had 11-2 season that year. And the average fan spent something like $100 per game per person, and that translated to roughly about $5 million per game here in Fayetteville in 2011. In 2014, when we did that study again, this was Brett Bielema's third season with the Razorbacks, and we had a mildly winning season, but we weren't ranked, and the spending was something like $80 per fan per game, and it roughly averaged to just over $4 million per game. So, you're looking at $1 million difference depending on how well the team was doing in terms of how much fans spent. And, that's fairly evident. So if the team's doing well, people like to spend more money. And then, of course, attendance, if it goes down, that results in less money. So if we had 10,000 fewer people in the stadium and we assumed that all of them came from outside Northwest Arkansas, that would be about $800,000 or so less in spending per game.
Well, let's get back to our winning ways then. The state's posted some impressive GDP numbers, 3.5% in the second quarter, two revised numbers, 4.8% and 4% GDP in the fourth quarter of 2016 and the first quarter of this year, respectively. Tell me, what is clicking on all cylinders? How is Arkansas doing compared to the rest of the nation?
So Arkansas is doing really well compared to the nation. You talked about those revised statistics and the most recent one. So we're looking at, Arkansas's GDP growth. It was ranked 6th, then 8th, and 14th in the most recent reading, all of which are pretty good rankings compared to the rest of the nation. So, we're seeing growth here, at least in the state, that's faster than the national average of where the U.S. economy is going. And we're seeing the reason for that growth is multifold. One of them is that the U.S. economy in general is doing pretty well. We're either in the 101st or 102nd month of economic expansion, which is, on track to become the second largest economic expansion in U.S. history. That's a good sign for the economy. Sectors that are doing well nationally, non-durable goods manufacturing and wholesale trade are also doing well in Arkansas. You've seen around the state a bunch of manufacturing announcements. A lot of that is in non-durable goods manufacturing. That's doing great. That sector is also doing well because the U.S. dollar has been trading weaker in recent times, and that obviously helps the export picture. So put all of these wonderful factors together, Arkansas's economy has been growing a lot faster than the national average, and that is certainly something we can celebrate here in Arkansas.
With the economy so good, let's cut taxes. The tax debate in Washington continues. The Senate and the House, they have these differing versions. I've seen estimates from some economists that will blow up the deficit. Others say it won't help middle-income earners. Some say it will. Others contend the economic growth spurt's that we're going to get from these cuts will stimulate the economy. Where does an economist like yourself go to get an impartial, objective analysis of the impact of this legislation?
See, the funny thing about us economists is that we can all be right at the same time. I mean, the tax bill is a complex, moving object. So all of those different prognostications that you've said about the tax, the deficit going up, about tax cuts for people, all of those things are possible at the same time. So I think the way the bill is currently written, you will see that the deficit goes up in the 10-year window. I think everybody agrees that that is the case. You'll also see that a lot of people will get tax cuts. Higher income people tend to get higher tax cuts. Lower income people tend to get lower tax cuts from the tax bill. I think that piece is also true because they threw this healthcare individual mandate repeal in there. I think people with lower incomes will lose some healthcare coverage. So on the whole, they'll do worse off even though they may get some tax cuts. I think that piece is also true. I also think that outside the 10-year window, to keep the deficit from going outside of that 10-year window, they've done some things like reducing the pace of inflation used to change how the tax brackets are done every year, which means that more people will qualify for higher tax brackets outside of that 10-year window, which means that more people will pay higher taxes outside the 10-year window. So you can see that all of these things can all be true at the same time, but some basic truths remain. If you cut taxes, people are more likely to spend money. And, tax cuts have always been used as a stimulus. When we've had times of recessions, both Republicans and Democrats cut taxes so people can spend more money. The problem with that is those effects tend to be temporary, and that's why they're a stimulus effect. So you'll see spending go up for a while, but then it usually dissipates. And what we've also learned over time is that spending doesn't go up enough to pay for itself. So in general, we've never found tax cuts actually pay for themselves through stronger economic growth and higher tax collections. So how does one, parse through all this information and all this conflicting information? I think, you look for people that are generally disliked by both sides. That's a very good indication that they're pretty nonpartisan in their outlook. So I look at people like the Brookings Institute and their Tax Policy Center, the Congressional Budget Office, the Joint Committee on Taxation, and then the Treasury Department has its own analysis team that does dynamic scoring as well, and they're pretty nonpartisan professional staff economists that do this. Another outfit is the University of Chicago. The Booth School there has a panel of economists from varying viewpoints, and they survey these economists on a variety of public policy issues, and they usually come up with pretty accurate read of where the economics profession is on many of these controversial issues.
Well, don't give away all your secrets. You're going to work yourself out of a job. We made it through the bulk of the third quarter earnings season. Wal-Mart and Tyson Foods both did very well. How do you see them setting up for a long play of performance?
I think both these companies based here in Arkansas have done several things to position themselves to compete in where the future growth is going to be. And so if you think back several years ago when Walmart's share price was taking a beating, right, when they were reinvesting in their stores, reinvesting in their staff, and purchasing some big e-commerce players, to where they are today, where they're close to either at record or record high share price, you're seeing a big turnaround in their business model where more people, their same store sales are up, their grocery business is doing really well, and importantly, they are competing with Amazon effectively on the online sales component. So their investments across all of these different fronts are working really well. So, people have, often wondered where Amazon's going to run away with the e-commerce piece of it. You're seeing the Walmart's, e-commerce piece has grown 60 and 50% in recent quarters. That's great news, both for Arkansas, both for the company, and great for consumers as well, because we want to see a lot of competition in the online space, and we don't want to just have one company, Amazon, left standing in that sphere. So Walmart in particular has made a lot of investments in that field, and their investments are beginning to pay off. Not only that is that they're able to make money on e-commerce and show profit as a business, so there should be some investor pressure eventually on Amazon, which typically has only cared about revenues and not profits, but Walmart's actually showing that you can compete in e-commerce produce both higher revenues and have profits as well. When we look at Tyson's made a lot of play in prepared food segment. There's this old saying that money can't buy you happiness. That is true. Money does, however, buy you leisure time. And so leisure time does lead to happiness for most people, I think. So you're trying to target consumers who want to maybe cook food but don't want to go through the entire process of sourcing all the ingredients, cutting the ingredients, and then preparing it. So looking at prepared food segment has really helped Tyson. And the other piece that's really helped Tyson in recent quarters is the fact that the economy is doing well. When the economy is doing well, people tend to eat a lot more meat. This is true in this country, and this is true in developing countries around the world. As their economy grows and people's income goes up, they consume a lot more meat. And when people consume a lot more meat, people move from the center of the grocery stores to the fridges on the ends where the meat section is, and they purchase a lot more of it. So that's certainly helped Tyson's bottom line in the recent past. So looking at both of these large companies here in Arkansas, both of them are doing well because the economy is doing well, but both of them also are doing well because they've made some strategic investments for long-term sustainable growth.
All right, now you got us all hungry. He's Mervin Jebaraj, economist and interim director with the Walton College of Business Center for Business and Economic Research. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Back with former U.S. Attorney Connor Eldridge. What's his take on where the Mueller investigation is going? That's just one topic we'll explore. Stick around.